tremendously and at every single level. And what they're realizing is that as things are going right now, if this continues, eventually Ukraine's military is going to collapse. And so they're preparing for that. Ideally, they would like to freeze it like they did when this all first began in 2014, and the Minsk I and Minsk II agreements. That was a means of saving the Ukrainian military, which was on the verge of collapsing then, freezing it, and then allowing the U.S. and its client states across Europe to rebuild, reorganize, rearm Ukraine's forces for the next round of violence. So they're just seeking to do this all over again. Freeze it before they collapse, begin rearming them. And this is what the U.S. has tasked Europe with doing, because the U.S. needs to save its own resources for focusing on China, Iran, and elsewhere, as part of this strategic sequencing. The division of labor to absolve the U.S. from primarily investing in Ukraine, free up resources for elsewhere. So that is exactly what they're doing. They have no intention at all whatsoever of making any sort of peace with Russia. And as you point out, this goes all the way back to the beginning of the 21st century, and obviously well before it. And this demonstrates continuity of agenda. It does not matter who Americans vote for, who is in the White House, who controls Congress. This is a singular agenda that continues no matter what. And despite the very vocal opposition President Trump during the campaign season had against all, the so-called deep state and the forever wars abroad, he has continued absolutely every single war that he inherited from the Biden administration, just as Biden did from the Trump administration and Trump did from the Obama administration. And he has started new wars against Yemen and Iran. He is building up for war against Venezuela very openly and obviously. And they are still planning to pivot toward Asia. And so this all continues uninterrupted, and it will continue. It will not be America that restrains itself. There is no prospect of change in America politically. The special interests driving this are unelected. They are monolithic. There really is no one else in the U.S. capable of challenging or displacing them. It will be up to the multipolar world to stop and then eventually reverse this.
One of the things I do like about Trump, though, is the fact that he's not captive to the whole weird notion that you can't talk to the opponent because they are bad guys. So, for example, he met with, in his first administration, a North Korean leader. Now he's meeting with Putin. And I think this for me, this is a thing which we have, one of those things we refer to as a moral virtue, that we don't talk to bad people. And so, but that also means we don't do diplomacy. I like this aspect. But on the other hand, it also appeared in the media recently that while he was in North Korea to meet Kim Jong-un, he also had his Navy SEALs do an operation against North Korea in which they killed a lot of civilians, fishermen, and then pulled away. But it's a little bit like the deception of Iran. I'm happy they want to talk and find a peace agreement, but when you're planning a strike in the middle of this, it is a bit deceptive. But on the topic, though, of peace efforts, the main, I guess, next step in this narrative of, first he met with Zelensky and Putin in Alaska, then he met with Zelensky and the Europeans at the White House. Now this big new step is to have Zelensky and Putin meet. I guess, what is the purpose of this meeting? Because usually you would have the state leaders would come and meet each other once all the main issues have been resolved, and they come for the grand finale to shake hands and put their signature down, the optics of it. But when neither side is prepared to make any real concessions, including the United States, what are they actually meeting for? What's the purpose of this peace initiative, if you will call it?
Well, first, addressing President Trump's willingness to speak with supposed American adversaries or declared American adversaries, we have to think back to the time when Then U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton met with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and they reset U.S.-Russian relations. And this was following another U.S. proxy war against Russia, this time using Georgia as a battering ram in 2008 against Russian forces along their southern border in the Caucasus region. And that was a failure. And the U.S. hit a brick wall, and they needed to reset their relations. So someone like U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who we know isn't interested in diplomacy at all, met with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. What was the purpose of this? It was to draw in the Russians and trick them. And that is exactly why President Trump is now meeting with people. And as you point out, even as he was meeting with North Korea's leadership, he had people inside North Korea murdering North Koreans. And then as he was talking with the Iranians, all along preparing to strike at and kill Iranians and wage war against Iran. So there is no actual interest in diplomacy. It is all a trick. It is to draw in other nations. It is to make the United States look like it is the reasonable one. And it is these nations that are intent on continuing the war. And I have a funny feeling that is why President Trump wants President Putin to meet with President Zelensky. And I forget who says it. I don't think that President Putin would have said something like this, because he's usually very polite no matter how upset he is. But someone somewhere said that this would be like a dog is barking at you and you get on your knees, your hands on your knees, and you bark back at the dog instead of talking to the person holding the leash. This is the equivalent of the Russians meeting with Ukraine's leadership when they're not actually in charge of anything. The people holding the leash is the United States. This is a U.S. war fought against Russia through Ukraine. And no amount of talking to Ukraine is going to change that. This needs to be resolved with the United States. And what we have seen is, despite Russia coming to these meetings and going through the motions, it is determined to solve this conflict on the battlefield. And that is what we are watching right now. They are remaining open to diplomacy. They know it will go nowhere, and they will settle this on the battlefield. And I think that is ultimately where this conflict will be settled. If the U.S. was actually interested in peace, it would be pursuing entirely different policies. And it isn't. So it's obvious that they have no interest in peace at all. And yes, Secretary of State Marco Rubio acknowledged the existence of the multipolar world, but only as an obstacle to climb over to reestablish American dominance over the planet. And they are obviously openly pursuing that across the four corners of the globe. Now, as far as Russia stringing the Americans along, as you said, Russia has been consistent all along. They have never changed their original demands. Everything that they had said in the very beginning remains in place, unchanged. And all they want is this proxy war being waged against them by the United States to end, and the very source driving this proxy war to be ended. And that is America's insistence on dominating the planet, dominating Europe, pushing its influence up to and all along Russia's borders, and even inside Russian borders. They demand that this stops. This is existential for them. This is not something that they're imagining. As we watch Syria disappear off the map, Libya already gone, U.S. forces still in Iraq, Iran being attacked out of the blue during negotiations. Russia isn't imagining this. And this is what they have demanded from day one. And the Americans refuse to acknowledge or accept this. And they will continue pushing. So they want the illusion of peace with Russia so they can freeze the conflict, so they can circle back around and finish it later. This is their intent. And at this point, it should be obvious to everybody. Because like you said, if they were actually interested in working together with the rest of the world rather than imposing itself upon it, there would be definite policies at least being talked about. They're not even talking about policies like this. They're openly pursuing policies that feed into continued American primacy. Absolutely everything that they're doing. They're rebuilding their whole military to wage large-scale war against peer adversaries like Russia and China. The ERAM missile that they're talking about sending to Ukraine, so somewhere around 3,000 of them eventually, obviously not in the beginning. this is a munition has been developed specifically for the type of warfare the U.S. envisions it itself will be fighting against nations like Russia and China in the near future. So they are fully preparing to continue this, continuing it more forcefully if necessary. And if they can buy time and perform strategic sequencing, that would be ideal. And that is where we are right now.